A102 means thank you, O Great Spirit. And so it's a prayer song. Bring a bow. That means greetings in the Powhatan language. And I want to say also Itakia Oasen, which is Sioux for we are related. Not only to each other as human beings, but related to all of creation. Because whatever happens to any part of creation, directly or indirectly, affects us in some way. And so we have to respect. And so it's good to open this peace conference so that we can have peace with all of creation, not just human beings around the world, but also the environment and the animals and the birds and the fish and everything. And so we want to begin with expressing for you the Haudenosaunee words for all else. And you'll see that in your program. Is a copy of that.
And please take that out because this is a read and response. And this is a drum.
When it's time for your response, I will raise my drumstick, and that way you all say, now our minds are as one. So a Thanksgiving address is offered before ceremony gatherings and important meetings of the Haudenosaunee people. The address is based on the belief that the world, life, cannot be taken for granted, that a spiritual connection of thankfulness and acknowledgement of all living things must be given to align the minds and hearts of people with nature. The people, today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people.
Now our minds are one. The Earth Mother, we are thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send greetings and thanks.
The waters. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the Spirit of water.
The fish, we turn our minds to all the fish life in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that we can still find pure water. So we turn now to the fish and send our greetings and thanks.
The plants. Now we turn toward the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eye can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come.
Now our minds are one.
The food plants. With one mind, we turn to honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, and berries have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greeting and thanks.
Now our minds are one.
The medicine herbs. Now we turn to all the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are happy there are still among us those special few who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the medicines and to the keepers of the medicines.
Now our minds are one.
The animals. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. We see them near our homes and in the deep forests. We are glad they are still here, and we hope that will always be so. we offer our greetings and thanks.
The trees. We now turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have had their own instructions and uses. Some provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many peoples of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life.
The birds. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks.
The four winds. We are thankful to the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help to bring the changes of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds.
The thunderers. Now we turn to the west, where our grandfathers, the thunder beings, live. With lightning and thundering voices, they bring with them the water that renews life. We bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to our grandfathers, the thunderers.
The sun. We now send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun. Each day, without fail, he travels the sky from east to west, bringing the light of a new day. He is the source of all the fires of life. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our brother, the sun.
Grandmother Moon. We put our minds together and give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon, who lights the nighttime sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movement of the ocean tides. By her changing face, we measure time, and it is the moon who watches over the arrival of children here on earth. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon.
The stars. We give thanks to the stars who are spread across the sky like jewelry. We see them in the night, helping the moon to light the darkness and bringing dew to the gardens and growing things. When we travel at night, they guide us home. With our minds gathered together as one, we send greetings and thanks to all the stars.
The enlightened teachers. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come to help throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to these caring teachers.
The Creator. Now we turn our thoughts to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on this Mother Earth. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator.
Closing words. We have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all things we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way.
And if you agree, it's traditionally to say, aho. Aho.
Don't go away yet. Don't go away. This is Tecumseh Red Cloud, which means a man of action looking to high places. He's from the Pamunkey tribe of Virginia, which is part of the Powhatan Nation. He is a descendant of the father of Pocahontas. He's also known locally as Reverend Nick Miles, and for 39 years he's been the pastor of a Reformed Church in Rosendale, New York, and Bloomington, near here. And when I went over to his house not long ago to meet him and plan for this, there was a tapestry on the wall which I noted, I'll just mention. It says, "Why do you take by force that which you can have by love?"
Those were Powhatan's words when the English came and took their land.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so now we will do something that's not in the agenda. And Eric Gullickson, who's the president of the Mountain House, will come up and make it happen.
Thank you, Brad. Good morning, everyone. So, in my role as president and fifth-generation member of the Smiley family, it's an honor to be standing here in this moment to welcome you all. It's in our development of this year, which is the Mountain House in this organization and my family's business and effort here. We're celebrating our 150th anniversary, and in planning that, we thought, and in building this particular event, it was discussed for many months about how to honor the legacy of Mohonk's commitment to bringing people together to talk and discuss issues far and wide, near to us. And so it's been quite a journey to get to this day, and I just wanted to thank everybody, including my family and Brad and others who have made this event possible, along with merging it with our celebration of our 150th anniversary, which is quite an auspicious moment. And so I wanted to, with that, introduce a guest and a neighbor and a good friend of ours, Senator Jen Metzger, who reached out to us several weeks ago and has been to Mohonk many, many times in other occasions. And it just seems so natural and so right that you're here today to speak to the assemblage. And so I wanted to invite you up and welcome you.
Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here, and it's a great honor to be here today to present a New York State Senate resolution that I introduced in my very first legislative session, honoring the 150th anniversary of Mohonk Mountain House. It's really honoring Albert Smiley and the Smiley family, who founded Mohonk Mountain House 150 years ago with a real vision that the family has carried through for generations now. As was mentioned, we're up to the 5th generation. It has certainly evolved over the years from, I think it started out as a 10-room inn and tavern, and is now, of course, a world-renowned destination that can accommodate 600 people, that has seen presidents and famous artists and theologians and musicians and all sorts of incredible people come through, and people from around the world. But it has always kept this incredible welcoming spirit of community, and you really feel like you are a part of the Smiley family and that you are in the Smiley house when you come here. And I've had the great pleasure of being here many times. And what has been that has been incredibly impressive to me, but also the incredibly strong commitment to and celebration of the natural world. And this extraordinary piece of it right here on the Shangum Ridge. This magnificent ridge and the ecosystems it supports have been at the core of the Mohonk Mountain House's identity, and the Smiley family has given us all this incredible gift of protecting it and preserving it for forever, for generations to come. And the Mountain House is truly unique among places like this, gathering places like this, and its commitment to the wider community and to sharing these gifts with us. There are not many places like this where you can ride your bike in from a neighboring preserve, where you can get a day pass if you live in the local community and enjoy all that it has to offer. Every year they open up this wonderful facility to the communities around us for Community Month. And I have so many memories as a parent coming here, doing the lemon squeeze with my kids. They learned to ice skate here. Rosendale Elementary School came here, for a night of ice skating. They came every year. It's a special place, and their generosity is beyond comparison. It's also a place where transformative ideas are born. Through Mohonk Consultations, I've been to several conferences up here of Mohonk, and not only does it provide a place to germinate ideas, but they actually come to fruition. And it's not just about talk; it's about action. And you all have made an incredible contribution in that regard. As I think a number of you know me and know that I'm particularly passionate about the environment, and I want to note the really extraordinary contributions to climate science of the Daniel Smiley Research Center and the Weather Station in collecting climate data for over a century. They have collected not just climate data, but a wealth of invaluable information on plant blooming, on bird migrations, on mammal and insect emergence. And as you all know, we face a climate crisis, and having this information locally, we can really see and trace the impacts that we're having on the environment. And I really appreciated that opening kind of prayer and recognition of the importance of really recognizing that everything is interconnected, everything we do affects everything else, and more than any other time, I think, in human history, we have to be mindful of every single thing we do in life, every action that we take. There's a lot more I can say about this family, but I know I'm just I'm very kindly being squeezed into a long and wonderful conference today. So I'm going to stop there, but I'm thrilled to be able to be here today. The Smiley family has just contributed so much to Ulster County, to New York, to humanity, and all the work you've done over the years, and I'm personally very grateful. So I would like to present this resolution, State Senate resolution, in recognition of the 150th anniversary of the Mohonk Mountain House. Thank you.
So, the members of the family that are here, if we could come up to the stage to receive this resolution and take a picture. Okay. So now I'm going to transition and introduce our next speaker. And I'm going to share a quick very quick story, because as I was thinking about sharing any comments in front of the assemblage of this group of people who are committed to peace and made the trip here today to really work on that effort collectively, I thought about what I might share. And I thought about sharing a story of something that just happened to me recently. And I was in a social environment with my really close friends, number of really good friends, and my children were there, and my son was with me. And there was an individual that was in the group that we were, there's obviously social energy in any environment, and we were both privy to this, and we both stepped away very quickly in the situation, and both said something to each other, saying, "Oh, that individual seems upset," or we're concerned about it. We were concerned about it, and my son called it out, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm really concerned about that too, and what can we do about it?" And I started telling stories in my head about it. I started thinking, well, maybe we should just shut down and not, because this person was incredibly important to us and is. Maybe we should figure out how to, navigate this and shut down. And what he said was, he used 2 words. He said, loving kindness. And when he said that, I was kind of blown away. And it really comes from, I think, his connection to things that I think a lot about, and a lot of our family thinks a lot about, and where the roots of my life and where I come from. So before I introduce my mother, I wanted to share this story and try and get through this. So what happened so he said this, and I kind of tried to zero into what he was saying, and he said, yeah, Dad, don't, maybe we should be compassionate and not try to build some story around this. And he didn't say those words exactly, but he shook me out of the moment of really I was tightening up. And sure enough, his counsel was right on, and I was, and again, listening to these prayers, I think it's item number 16, I was thinking about the teachers of who we have as our teachers in our lives. And certainly, our children are really the ones, for me, that are the teachers. And I was so moved by that. And so, clearly, as you can tell, I'm still moved by it. But what was even more weighty about it is that the person that we were speaking of is the most important person in my life, my wife. And so in that moment, he was able to help me resolve that tension, and it dissipated. It disappeared. And it was simple. And so in this gathering, in this moment in time when we're seeing what's happening around us in politics and everywhere else, to have our children focused and able to provide that context, to me is, in all of our search for definition of peace, to me that was the simplest solution. And so I attribute, and as I said, I think a lot about that, and I was thinking, oh, I'm a proud dad. He was able to bring that to where did he get this? But it's the generations, it's the roots of this concept of loving kindness and compassion, and just those premises that come through the generations. And I attribute much of that to my mother, Sandra Smiley, standing next to me. And so that's my introduction to you, Mom. And now,
and as my son, you have taught me a whole lot. And this is a hard way for me to
breathe.
Yes.
Breathe and be vulnerable, because that's the...
Well, I am vulnerable.
Do you want me to stay here?
You stay here, because I had to stay. Yeah. It's wonderful to see so many people here. When I first came in, there wasn't anybody. And welcome. And one thing I wanted to say is that when we grew up here, we didn't call this a hotel, we called it the Big House. And so that's the way I feel about this place. And I mostly just wanted to recognize our ancestors, Albert and Eliza, and Effie and Daniel, who we're all actually descended from. And this room, which carries energy from the original conferences. This room is one of the places in the Mountain House that's always been the same through my life. And I think for 150 years mostly. So this is an important setting. And also, because I went on the morning hike to Skytop and watched the sunrise this morning and realized how important the land is to me and has always been to the family. And I really hope that you are able to get out on the land today. It's the most beautiful day, and that's a big part of the experience of being here. So thank you for coming. And are you next? Okay. So this is Brad Berg, our, come. All right. He was a chair of Mohonk Consultations for 5 years or so, and he's been the chair of this conference, and he's been the driving force behind it, and we wouldn't be here today without Brad. So he's going to carry you through the rest of the weekend, and looking forward to it.
Thanks. There's a group of us carrying us through together. So, welcome, folks, to those of you here, as well as all of you around the planet who are connecting with us over the internet. We don't really need to be all together, physically present, to truly be together. So for those of you out there, wherever you are around the globe, welcome to this conference. So thank you all for being part of the living tradition of peace building here at Mohonk Mountain House. As you'll soon hear, people have been gathering here since 1896 to do just what we are doing today. And it sure seems more crucial than ever that we simply figure out how we can all get along with each other, despite our differences. I've been using the phrase living tradition of peace building here at Mohonk, and I think of this parlor as a sacred space that continues to hold and transmit the energy and intention of those conferences long ago, which still flows through our aspiration and our efforts. For almost 40 years now, Mohonk Consultations has had a significant focus on environmental and sustainability issues and has addressed food insecurity, protecting water resources, protecting land resources, renewable energy, and more. Each year we give a Distinguished Achievement Award to local unsung heroes who are doing truly useful work in their particular field. Please be aware that Mohonk Consultations is a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1980, and while we are based here at the Mountain House, we are a separate entity. I like to think that the Mohonk Preserve, which provides stewardship and access to thousands of acres of land here on this ridge, and Mohonk Consultations are siblings, and that the two groups are children of the Mountain House and Smiley family, and that both Consultations and the Preserve have grown up, and each one is fulfilling our mission. The purpose of Mohonk Consultations is to help to bring about a clearer understanding of the interrelationship of all life on Earth, emphasizing the need for sustainable use of all of the Earth's resources, including the human community, and to support the development of practical means to do so. So we convene, that's our specialty. Hopefully you all act. So our annual programs, a forum, a conference like this, and our Distinguished Achievement Award, engage our regional communities in dialogue and plans of action on pressing environmental and social issues vital to the Hudson River Valley that are also often reflected in national and global challenges. You know that phrase, think globally, act locally? Gatherings here have served to educate and galvanize people, many times resulting in productive, ongoing initiatives such as a model farm, a watershed alliance, and free healthcare. We are run by a volunteer board with one paid part-time administrative coordinator. So please feel free to speak to one of our board members about opportunities to volunteer or to work with us. As there are no members or dues, we rely on donations to carry out our work, so please consider helping in that way if possible. So we didn't invite you here just to listen to our presenters. My hope is that you will be truly inspired, and then each in our own way, when you go back to your communities, act on your inspiration. We have been able to bring together a wonderful group of presenters who will tell you about the real and practical efforts that they are involved in, efforts which are creating solutions. We have designed a conference which will address peace on all levels, from peace within to peace in our communities to peace on an international level. After all, peace is living in harmonious relationship with self, others, and all life. I'll say it again. Peace is living in harmonious relationship with self, others, and all life. Could we say it together? Peace is living in harmonious relationship with self, others, and all life. And if we lived that, we'd have a different world. Mohonk Consultations is always sure to provide ample opportunity for folks to network with each other at our conferences. It helps allow for that special magic to happen when folks meet up and connect with each other. So during the breaks, the breakout sessions, lunch, and later on, be sure to share your visions, your questions, and your work with each other. Our open community conversation tomorrow offers another useful opportunity to hear from and connect with each other. I hope that a lot of you will be able to be here tomorrow morning when the conference focuses on youth and the future of peace. After all, youth are always the future, and their vision and their determination can guide humanity onto a healthier path towards a more cooperative, sustainable, and peaceful world. I'm an optimistic, kind of idealistic guy, and I know we can all do our part in transforming this world, and that real changes are already happening, and that there are many positive forces at play. I'd like to share my heartfelt gratitude to a few Mohonk Consultations folks who have worked long and hard in planning for this conference. Lorraine May, Sandra Smiley, and our administrative assistant out in the back, Nancy Graham. Thank you so much. And a special thanks to Dot Maver, international peace builder extraordinaire, who has been traveling the globe spreading the spirit of peace. Thank you all. Mohonk Consultations is really proud to be part of the Smiley family's year-long celebration of their 150th anniversary. And I want to thank Eric and Nina and other folks who invited us to do this conference. It's a little different for us. We usually do our own thing, but this conference is really a part of the Smiley family and Mohonk Mountain House year-long anniversary, and it was great to collaborate with them on this. We are also really grateful to the many people who made donations in memory of the previous Mountain House CEO, Bert Smiley. And we are also very grateful for generous support from Nina Smiley, Brian Smiley, as well as several others who helped make this possible. I'd also like to thank LifeBridge Sanctuary and Foundation in Rosendale, New York, for their generosity, which has allowed us to offer free attendance to 10 students from local schools. And another thanks goes out to Diana Zuckerman, a teacher at Rondout Valley High School, who has brought a group of students here, just as she did at our last peacebuilding conference a few years ago. Thank you. And a final thank you to Ann and Dan Gunther. They're the ones who placed all those flags along the driveway. I think they pretty much have all the member states of the United Nations. And that just kind of symbolizes the interconnectedness that we've already been hearing about. A couple of housekeeping things. The restrooms are just outside and to your left, but you can also find them on other levels here in the big house. There's also a small gift shop on the main floor where you can shop and get a small snack or drink. Your program packet includes the agenda, bios of speakers, and there's also an evaluation form, which I hope you'll please honestly and bluntly fill out, because we're always trying to refine and improve what we do here, and we rely on you folks for some input. Our lunch will be downstairs, right under the parlor here in the Lake Lounge. And there's another part of the conference that's going on that's not in this room. Sue DeSico, who spoke last night about her Peace Crane project, is available to help you all make peace cranes, and she can tell you about her work. It's in the Rock Reading Room. That is one flight up down the hall. If you follow the signs to the Rock Reading Room, which is almost as far as the spa, you'll find Sue happily waiting for you. So in most years, our fall conference is followed by a forum in the spring. That's a continuation of the theme. And this year, coming up, it'll be April 5th. We hope you can join us. I'm not sure exactly where this came from, but I'm going to read this to you before I finish. I call you from your dreams of vague beauty and possible utopias and wishful thinking to face life today as it is, and then to begin in the place where you are to make it better. I call you to the experiment of right human relations, beginning with your own personal relations to your family and friends, and then to the task of educating those you contact so that they also start a similar work. It is the work of attaining right individual relations, right group relations, right intergroup relations, right national relations, and right international relations. I call you to the realization that in this work, no one is futile or useless, but that all have a place of practical value. I call you to recognize that goodwill is a dynamic energy which can bring about world changes of a fundamental kind, and that its mode of expression is the activity of the individual man and woman through their massed intent. The massed power of goodwill, the dynamic effect of intelligent and active understanding, and the potency of a trained and alive public opinion which desires the greatest good of the greatest number are beyond belief. This dynamic power has never been employed. It can, today, save the world. Okay. Now we'll get into the meat of the conference. In just a moment. So, Dot Maver is, oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Okay. Thank you, Dot. So, you've heard a little bit about the fact that from 1896 to 1915, the International Arbitration Conferences were here, and Louisa Finn and an assistant, an intern of hers, did extensive research about that. And Louisa will talk about that with you. Louisa was previously a member of Mohonk Consultations Board for many years. She's also a speech pathologist, right, who lives locally. And could you please come up and tell us?
Hi, everyone. Is this working? Good. Okay. So I'm so excited to be here. I'm Louisa Finn. I'm fourth generation Smiley family member. You've heard a lot about this Smiley family today, and you're going to hear more. There's a sense I have today of a great confluence of energies coming together. 150th anniversary of Mohonk, Mohonk Consultations Peace Conference, the first time that I know of that the business and Mohonk Consultations have co-sponsored an event. State senators coming, the great vulnerability that our President Eric shared with us it's all touching to me. And I'm part of this flow too. So you're going to hear about my ancestors first. My grandmother, Mrs. Frances Smiley, came here in 1919 to sell chorale solo, which is a version of an organ and a piano. And she fell in love with Francis Smiley, my grandfather, and stayed the rest of her life playing that organ there that you see into her 80s and 90s. As you've heard, my great-grandfather, Daniel, sits right there with his wife, Effie, and his half-brother, Albert, and his wife, Eliza, are on this side. So I'm being watched. I have this feeling of being watched. And I hope you're paying attention because there's going to be a quiz later. And for those of you who remain confused about who we all are, there is a family tree outside the gift shop, and you can go study later. I wanted to share a bit about my journey first with this talk. This year, I became very interested in spending time at the archives here at Mohonk. It was a personal journey that led me there. I'm a poet, and I thought it would be very interesting to go to the archives and read letters of my ancestors and perhaps try to give voice to some of these people who came before me that I didn't know. So I started going to the archives regularly. We have a wonderful archivist, Nell Boucher. I'm not sure if she's here, but she was a big part of this journey for me. We had many interesting discussions. I see you now. In reading the letters of my ancestors, mostly I read Effie's letters and Daniel's letters. I read some of Albert also, and Eliza. There's a feeling of being really in the time in which they are writing, and there's a relationship that's formed. And there's, I really began to discover something about who they were and the time that they lived in, and it's quite wonderful. So when Sandra Smiley asked me to present about the history of the peace conferences, I was already in the archives doing this work, so it was sort of a natural outgrowth of that work that I'd been doing. The challenge I faced, because I'm not a historian, those who know me will tell you that I'm kind of an abstract thinker. I'm a conceptual person. I'm not a detail person, right, Josh? So I needed to understand more about what these international arbitration conferences were, about who the Smileys were and are, and to trace this tradition of conferences over the last 100+ years against a backdrop of great historical and social change. So as I say, being a concept person, I looked for threads, common threads that have carried through from then until now. And so I'm going to cheat and go to the end and give you guys the answers so that you can think about these threads as I fill in with more details. How do I do?
The clicker's right there.
Okay, so do I just click this thing? Oh, this. Yay, okay. First thread, genius loci. I love this term, that a place can have its own genius. That there's this pervading spirit that inhabits certain places. And How many of you began to felt a change in yourself just as you drove in from the gatehouse yesterday, just driving in? What is it about this place? You know, so how many of you were up on the skytop 7 o'clock this morning? Not very many, but those brave ones. So is it the land that has been mentioned? Is it the people? Is it the history? Some places just have a power that resonates in the subconscious, beyond reason, beyond rationale. You know, this place is one of those places, and I'm sure long before the Smileys were here, it had that. So the less explanation of this, I think, the better. I'm going to leave it all to you to discover what the genius loci of this place is. However, it has been observed by visitors for as many years as it has been here. George Barthelmes, who was a participant in the 1914 conferences, said, "Thus, really one becomes quite modest and silent in this Lake Mohonk air, and one surprises oneself now and then on currents of thought whose possibility one would have doubted even the day before yesterday with an indulgent smile." 80 years later, Noel Brown of the UN, who participated in the Mohonk's conference 125th anniversary, said, "I was a product of the 70s when confrontation was the order of the day. Mohonk provided an oasis of serenity where one could engage in a non-politicized dialogue with a view to finding solutions." So just being here in this place can have an effect on the way you feel and on the way you think. You'll all have to weigh in on that after the weekend, and how that has affected you. Oh, okay. Thread number 2, Quaker testimonies. So I found this online. I just thought it was hysterical. "Spice up your life with Quakerism," it says, which is, to me, very amusing. But I thought it was, you know, a way of remembering some of the key values of the Quakers: simplicity, peace, integrity, community, and equality. I think we all think of pacifism and Quakers together very naturally. And if you believe in this kind of outlandish notion that the Quakers believe that all people are equal in the eyes of God, and then you also believe in peace, it seems that bringing people together in discussion is a natural thing to do. How else are you going to get to peace? And if you believe in, as I say, everyone is of equal value. So I thought that was interesting to draw, to think about the values and how they instructed the conferences. Oh, the other thing about the testimonies and the testimonials is that these are not just beliefs, but they were to be lived and to be acted upon. So it was inherent upon Quakers to actually make real their belief system. So it's not, it has never been enough for the Smileys to have a successful business. That was not seen as a primary value. And perhaps arbitration is just a more legal and procedural way of doing that, bringing people together in discussion. Thread 3 is idealism and practicality. We need both. You think you can read this silly cartoon about, dude, I have so many ideas that would revolutionize life on Earth and bring awesomeness to mankind. And this guy's saying, how about you just take out the garbage and do the dishes for once? We need both. We need to be idealistic, and we also need to have a way of going about things. Albert K. Smiley was written about and referred to as a striking blend of idealism and practicality. This quality of having, head in the clouds and feet on the ground, or should I say, head on the mountain, feet in the valley. I've had, the opportunity to witness this quality in many of my Smiley family members, and all the way up until today. And my readings in the archives have led me to some interesting places, from love letters to notes about the installation of lightning rods. And I just bring this up because I don't know, maybe it's just sort of my poetic imagining, but I found that I inherited a gene for being either terrified or fascinated with lightning, and recently, we live in the valley, and recently the storms have gotten worse and worse and worse. I don't know if you've all noticed, but we've had a lot of lightning, very close hits. And so I entreated my husband to put lightning rods on our house, which finally happened. But in the meantime, Nell Boucher, the archivist, shared with me that the Smileys, of course, also had to put lightning rods on this hotel long ago. And there was a lot of discussion about how lightning rods worked and et cetera. Anyway, story, I think real, is that Daniel, either himself or would get an employee to run around and pour water on the base of where the lightning rod came into the ground to actually improve the efficiency when a storm was coming up. So I was just imagining Daniel, hosting these very, elite groups of people and talking about these lofty topics, and then perhaps a storm brewing and him running out and pouring water on the lightning rod grounds. This idea that these both things are needed in order to move forward in life. So to orient you all to the arc of the talk, I'm going to show you 3 slides very quickly, which have a lot of information on them. But these are the bulletin boards that are outside in the alcove. And I encourage you to when you have time, look at them. There's interesting pictures and copy on there. And it just, as I say, illustrates how I thought about this talk today. And the first one is the International Arbitration Conferences from 1895 to 1916. The second one is called Keith Smiley's Invitation in 1969, and this covers roughly the period in the 60s and 70s. And then finally, we have 1980 to the future Mohonk Consultations, the tradition continuing. So we'll begin. The International Arbitration Conferences were held from 1895 at Mohonk to 1916 every year, annually, at the beginning of the season. And they were started by Albert K. Smiley, who was a Quaker school teacher and administrator, and actually an accidental hotelier. So the history of how he came to be a hotelier is probably a different story. But I think the idea of him being a teacher is very interesting because these conferences remained consciousness-raising kinds of events. And to this day, I think that's true with the conferences at Mohonk. So Albert bankrolled the conferences himself. It was the Gilded Age, and there was a great optimism in this country. The government of the USA at the time was seen as an example that the world should follow. With the advent of the railroad and the telephone, people could travel and communicate more easily. There was this sense in this country that there was no problem that could not be solved. The idea of thinking of the world in a unified way, quote unquote, world mind, was a new concept at the time. And you'll see on Albert and Eliza there on the left, and Daniel and Effie here on the right. Albert was not wealthy himself, but he had been schooled at Haverford College, and he had many influential friends and associations. His half-brother, Daniel, came to help him run the business and stepped into his shoes to run the conferences after his death. I want to read you Albert's vision. He said, "I believe that these discussions about arbitration will have to be continued for a long series of years. But I do say this, that in the long run, it may be 50 years, it may be 100. I have full faith in the ultimate triumph of this principle we are advocating. I want to say also that we propose to fight it out along this line here at Lake Mohonk if it takes 100 years. I have spoken to those who will inherit this estate and have put such charges on them that my life will not terminate this series of conferences." So it was very clear, and he was visionary. Albert and Daniel wanted to distinguish these conferences from more traditional peace groups. So I think this was interesting, and Dot mentioned something last night about there being a positive approach to the talks and not an anti-anything. And I think Albert and Daniel were quite aware of this. They, as I say, they were not, they wanted to be considered practical problem solvers. And this quote from Daniel highlights that approach, as well as the embrace of scientific language, which was a hallmark of the progressive era that Daniel embodied. At this date, one would think it unnecessary to explain that this is not, nor has it ever been, a peace conference, so-called. It is rather a conference of experts on a scientific problem, a company of experts addressing itself to an uninformed populace. It is taken for granted that all here are convinced that war is undesirable, and it is our purpose with earnestness, but at the same time with carefulness and prudence, to devise machinery for making its recurrence less frequent. So you hear the language that's being used. It's really about, establishing this mechanical, almost machine to solve these problems, this scientific way of doing it. So I want to also just mention that this place was a home, as you've heard before, first to Albert and Eliza, and then to Daniel and Effie. And in reading Effie's letters, it was clear to me that I'm not focusing on her tonight, but she was an equal and active participant in the conferences. Eliza was not well for most of her older life, so I don't think she took the same participation. The conference participants prided themselves on the diversity of their views, though by today's standards they were not so very diverse, being primarily of the intellectual and social elite classes. However, this was the first group of elites in this country who met to discuss national and foreign policy with the purpose of educating and influencing public opinion. So by example, at the 1904 conference, there were 15 diplomats and government officials, 10 judges, 18 lawyers, 20 educators and college presidents, 30 clergymen, 25 editors or journalists, and 45 businessmen. Women were not well represented, though they did become more plentiful as the years proceeded. What did they want? Over the course of the 21 years of the conferences, they really had two main aims. The first was to highlight the practical possibilities of arbitration while investigating its limitations as an alternative to armed conflict. And the second was to set up an international court, a kind of supreme court of the world. And there they are, right where we are today. Outcomes. The conferences had significant influence in this country and in the world. The most direct influence was in the relationship with the Hague conferences, which happened in 1899 and 1907, and ultimately led to the permanent international court at The Hague, established in 1922. On the left, you're seeing a picture of The Hague. And out in the alcoves, you'll see a picture of the Peace Temple I'm going to talk about. Mohonk sent delegates to the Hague conferences, and ideas and enthusiasm were shared between what was called the House in the Woods in the Netherlands and the House in the Woods at Mohonk. A good friend of Albert Smiley, Andrew Carnegie, while not attending the conferences, put up money to establish a peace temple at the Hague Court in 1913. It was said that there should be a tablet of whitest marble in the temple with the name of Albert K. Smiley on it. You could see why Albert K. Smiley was chosen to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1913. Unfortunately, he died before that honor could be bestowed. The process of arbitration had many successes in the world, particularly in the year 1911. Some of the outcomes included settlements of disputes between Britain and the US over Newfoundland fisheries, between Venezuela and the US over a financial claim, between Britain and France over an escaped prisoner, claims dispute between Russia and Turkey, and controversy between Italy and Peru. Albert K. Smiley said at the 1912 conference, "Surely not a bad year's work." So things were going well, and they were quite optimistic that they had solved the problem of world conflict. Yes. And you will have heard probably before this, and it's said a lot in our house tours, that there's a direct link between the international arbitration conferences and the formation of the League of Nations and the UN. However, it's not really a direct link, and I struggled to say something about that today, like how to say it in a way that's actually historically accurate, and because it wasn't a connect the dots sort of thing. So Nell Bechet and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I wrestled with it because I want to make the point that it did have an influence, but how did it have an influence? So I was very frustrated about this yesterday when I was finishing up writing my talk, and I said, one last Google, and I Googled International Arbitration Conferences connection to the League of Nations. And all of the proceedings of all the conferences back then are online. You could find them yourself. And lo and behold, I found during the final conference, which was 1916, with war on the doorstep, there was a presentation given by a guy named Alpheus Snow, who was a lawyer from Washington, and he was discussing the merits of a plan for a League of Nations. And the group that was advocating this plan was called the League to Enforce Peace, which is an interesting name. And it was headed up by a guy you may have heard of named President Taft. Actually, he was ex-president at the time. So this lawyer, Snow, was debating the model of such a league. His talk was called Cooperation versus Compulsion. Should we be using violence essentially to establish peace? But as I read through the files in the archives, there were many correspondences from this League to Enforce Peace to Daniel Smiley. And I came across a telegram from 1919, which you can see out there on the boards also, which is from the League to Enforce Peace, asking Daniel for money to ratify the League of Nations. This was in September of 1919. The League of Nations was ratified in January of 1920. I have no idea if Daniel sent the money, but the United States didn't join the League of Nations. But this showed me that the Mohonk discussions clearly had influence. They were being talked about. There were the same kind of people who were involved in these discussions who were also involved with the ratification of the League of Nations. And thus, eventually, 26 years later, became the UN. Many groups trace their founding to the conferences: the American Society of International Law, New York Peace Society, World Peace Foundation, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. There was a National Council of 10 formed at Mohonk, whose job it was to coordinate all such groups around the country at the time. And finally, education. On the right here, you'll see a little publication called The International Mind, an argument for the judicial settlement of international disputes. This was a collection of the speeches of a guy named Nicholas Butler, who spoke at the conferences over a period of years. Not only were the proceedings of the conferences written up and distributed, but this was distributed widely at colleges and universities. And so there was a lot of nationwide enthusiasm engendered about the principles of arbitration, and it did all come from here at that time. You're going to hear more, by the way, about the details of the history from my young friend Eli Bashant, who will be here tomorrow. He's the Vassar student who did more of the serious lifting with the research. So fast forward 2 generations, during which time 2 world wars, the Depression, and great changes in society made the survival of the business paramount in the family's mind. In 1969, Albert Keith Smiley II, who was Daniel's grandson, was at the helm of the business along with his brother Dan. And a whole different time, the Vietnam War is raging. The Mohonk Preserve had been formed at the time to forever protect the land around Mohonk. Now, you've heard a lot about the values of land protection, land stewardship. There's also this concern about people. And think about the Quaker testimonials, and think about pragmatic idealism. Keith was driven to do more to include peaceful methods of conflict resolution as part of the Smiley legacy. He wrote an invitation in 1969 proposing a conference in the spring of 1970 which would be the 75th anniversary of the first International Arbitration Conference. And he wanted to revisit these ideas of arbitration, conciliation, and mediation for resolving differences. His contention was that the international organizations that had been founded, such as the League of Nations and the UN, were based on political rather than legal principles, emphasizing stopping wars after they had begun rather than preventing their outbreak. I included his wife Ruth here. Well, I love this quote. It's not his, but he said it. Is a time of famine a time to give up one's efforts to produce what food one can? Because things were, as they are today, falling apart in the 60s and 70s. Ruth I included because though she was not directly involved in the conferences, Keith credited her with getting him to travel and to teach him the benefit of distance to enhance one's perspective. And there she is doing one of her favorite things, photographing nature. Dr. Noel Brown was the director of the UN Environmental Program and a great thinker and writer and friend to the Smileys. And he was in attendance at that 1970 conference and at other conferences that happened here in those years. As a contrast to the early conferences, the speeches at this 1970 conference were not very optimistic. I should say far less optimistic. Noel Brown talked about the crisis of confidence and serious doubts being raised as to whether UN was relevant to the challenges that faced the world at the time. Sounds familiar to me. He said there was a failure to appreciate the immensity of the stakes involved and the profundity of changes in the world experienced since the vision of 1945 had been expressed in the Charter of the International Court of Justice. So his quote is, "The UN is at best an instrument, and like most instruments, it might be used, it might be misused, it might be abused, or it might not be used at all." Brown wrote of the notion of establishing a West Point of peace, an academy for training people in all the principles of peaceful living in the way a military academy trains people for war. So I was struck by Dot's presentation last night saying from these years onward, all of this began to happen. And I think, am I right in saying that you work for an Academy of Peace? Or yes. So I mean, this was new. This was new thinking, that to think that, oh, we should have an Academy for Peace in the 60s. So it's really only 50 years, and all of this has come. But there was a sense in those years that though we now had these organizations, we still didn't have in the hearts and minds of men those basic underlying fundamental principles that were needed to make these organizations effective. So throughout the 60s and 70s, there were conferences held at Mohonk involving UN diplomats, international students, and discussing a wide range of topics and procedures relating to peace. But clearly, the world had grown, its problems had become more complex, and the reach and influence of Mohonk's conferences in the global sphere had greatly lessened. And so during this time, Keith was thinking a lot about how to carry forward the tradition of conferences at Mohonk. One of his prime inspirations was Rabbi Finkelstein, former chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. From 1946 to 1968, Rabbi Finkelstein held an annual meeting at Mohonk consisting of leaders in a variety of diverse fields: science, business, philosophy, religion, government. His purpose was to bring people together to seek common ground for visioning a better world. So they were talking about value problems in contemporary civilization. And these were very influential to Keith, these meetings. I'd just like to throw in a note, because in my family, my mother was a Quaker, as you know. She grew up here. My father was a Jewish pianist from the Bronx. He came up here in the 50s to play a concert, fell in love with my mother, and they had a really terrific, long, wonderful marriage. And there is a little tiny thread through the Smiley family of Quakers and Jews getting along famously together. Nina Feldman Smiley and Bert Smiley also had a wonderful union for many, many years. And I love this, that Keith found one of his prime inspirations from this rabbi. Another inspiration was the teachings of Robert Greenleaf on servant leadership. The essence, and you can read the quote, the essence of this leadership style is to lead by consensus, allowing all involved to be a part of the decision-making process. So we can think Quaker testimonials in this regard too. And also, if you have or have not noticed, many of the Smiley family are introverts. I like to say I'm an introvert. You laugh my husband laughs when I say that, but I am. I don't really, it takes me a lot to get to speak in front of a group. So this sense of the ability to lead from behind, which servant leadership, was very resonant to the Smiley family. And I think Robert Greenleaf really wrote and spoke about that. Wrapping up. On to 1980, to the future. Mohonk Consultations, a new model. So Keith's vision for sustaining the conference tradition resulted in the formation of consultations in 1980. And the ideas you've heard from others is to think global and act local, to stay grounded and celebrate the achievements of individuals and groups in our very region who are already getting things done, and to provide a space to bring together individuals and groups to co-create new ways of getting things done. Sandra Smiley received the baton from her father, Keith Smiley, and is still holding it today, holding space for the contribution of Mohonk Consultations. I won't say much about the programs because I think Brad has already covered that, the things that they've done in the Valley, you've heard that. But I just wanted to say on a conceptual level that we're still bringing together diverse voices in problem solving. This is consistent. And we are no longer getting telegrams from presidents and or being, texting people who have $1.5 million for a peace temple or something like that. However, the approach that consultations takes has mirrored a decentralized shift in American society over many decades, in which a grassroots approach to change has taken hold. So the notion is that we give support and give rise to ideas that can shape public opinion. Not really so very different from 100 years ago. However, what's different? The diversity of the participants. People from all walks of life. It's not just the elite, as we say, who come to Mohonk Consultations programs. Farmers, students, business leaders, local government officials, citizens, educators, social service advocates. So we're ever broadening the idea of working on peace building to include human prosperity and sustainability. I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that these threads, Quaker beliefs, pragmatic idealism, and this genius loci survive in this family business, which does not let the bottom line supersede its moral responsibility to make the world a better place. So I'm so proud to be a member of this family and its continuing legacy. But I'd like to invite you all in your journey this weekend to consider the three threads that we've pulled on this morning. Number one, genius loci. How can this place facilitate change in you? What can you receive from the spirit of this place? Two, consider your own values and beliefs. Ask yourself what and perhaps who you are serving. And three, what is your vision? And what are the means to get there? Thank you for listening.
So before I introduce the next speaker, I'll just mention that we're going to slightly shift our agenda. And after Nina does the mindfulness piece, we'll take a break. And Nick doesn't know this yet, but we'll have a call to order by the drum. So when you hear the drum, please come right back because we will resume. Nina Smiley has been practicing mindfulness for over 30 years. She is co-author with her twin brother, David Harp, of The 3-Minute Meditator. Their book has been translated into 7 languages. You can get it at the bookshop downstairs. Nina delights in simplicity, believes in simplicity. She brings a PhD in psychology, many years of experience teaching and in business settings, and a passion for mindfulness and for Mohonk. to this moment in time. So let's be mindful together with Nina.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Thank you all for being here. And I want to say, once again, welcome to our house. On behalf of the Smiley family, myself, my husband, Bert. Bert was the president and CEO here at Mohonk for almost 30 years, and he's very much here with us today. So thank you all for being here with all of us. The threads of the talk, I want to speak about mindfulness for a few minutes and put it in the context of creating and sustaining peace. Then most importantly, we'll do some mindfulness, because mindfulness is all about the practice. It's all about the doing. And at times, it feels like there are just too many words. You know, in a world that's increasingly complex, fast-paced, at times overwhelming, there's a yearning for simplicity. And that's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is moment-to-moment awareness of what is, in a gentle, non-judgmental way. Simply being present in the moment, non-judgmentally, observing what is. And take this a step farther. Add compassion. When we define peace as living in right relationship with self, with others, with all life, we can see that mindfulness is at the very core of peace. And mindfulness is a reason to be cheerful. David Berg calls out the importance of positive energy and positive examples. Moment-to-moment awareness of what is means that I have a choice, one moment at a time. I have a choice. The book that I wrote, The 3-Minute Meditator, it was designed in the very title to let people know that you don't have to carve out 20 minutes twice a day. You don't have to carve out 15 minutes 5 times a day. All you have to do is know how mindfulness works, because everyone has 3 minutes. If you don't have 3 minutes, you have 2 minutes. If you don't have 2 minutes, you have 30 seconds. You have 3 breaths. Mindfulness is a choice, one moment at a time. So no breath is wasted. Neuroplasticity means that the brain changes anytime you do something repeatedly. When you make mindfulness a habit and you do it repeatedly, you're changing the neural pathways of the brain to bring mindfulness moment to moment into your life. So learning to clear the mind and calm the body again and again. As you do this, you're able to listen more deeply. You're able to put energy that would going into judging yourself and judging others into understanding yourself, understanding others, right relationship with self, others, with the world around you. So what we're going to do right now is some mindfulness so that we can be truly present for the rest of the day. We're going to set our intention for the rest of the day, for tomorrow, for the rest of the week, the rest of the month. How about the rest of the year, the rest of our lives? To be mindful, one moment at a time. So we're going to bring ourselves into the moment and allow mindfulness to change the channel for us right now. It changes us from the static that goes on in this complex and very busy life. And at times there are emotions. There can be anxiety, fear, anger, depression, judging. Mindfulness brings us back again and again to the simplicity of clearing the mind, calming the body, moment-to-moment awareness of what is in this gentle, non-judgmental way. So if you would close your eyes for a moment right now, and let's be mindful together. Close your eyes, breathe gently and fully. As you're breathing, focus on the in, the breath as it comes in through the nose. Feel it on the back of the throat. Feel the belly rising and falling. Only the breath. Feel the breath enter. Feel the breath leave. come to your center. If a thought comes in, let it go. Let it go. For this moment, we're simply present. Right here, right now. All of us together at this moment in time. Clearing the mind, calming the body, again and again. And as we breathe gently and fully, we set our intention to be open, to listen, to ourselves, to others. In this gentle, non-judgmental way, only the moment, again and again. And as we breathe gently and fully, letting thoughts go, we feel the mind become spacious. And we bring this intention of spaciousness, of presence, of deep listening to each moment of this conference, to each moment of this day, and beyond that, to living in right relationship with self, others, all that is, one moment at a time. Because we have a choice, one moment at a time. So very gently, if you'd open your eyes, let in a little bit of light, then a little bit more. Bringing awareness back to the room, continue to breathe gently and fully. As we continue through the day, together in this moment, moment to moment. And I'll give you a phrase to take with you for what has become for me the essence of mindfulness. I believe in simplicity. And for me, the essence of mindfulness is all I have to do is show up and be interested, one moment at a time. That's all I have to do. The just show up means present in the moment to moment awareness of what is. And the be interested means non-judgmental. I can be curious about what's going on. I don't have to like it, but I don't have to be judgmental. I can be interested. I can be curious. And I will ask myself at times, all I have to do is show up and be interested. Can I do that for one moment? The answer is always yes, I can do that for one moment. And then the next moment, all I have to do is show up and be interested. Can I do that? I can do that for another moment. And we string moments into minutes, and minutes into hours, and hours, days, weeks, and ongoing. So thank you for being here with us in this moment and starting the day with some mindfulness. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we will welcome Philip Helmick and Dr. Sakina Yacobi. So enjoy the break.